don't think there's going to be a lot of surprise in the top four. I really don't. I think that it's going to be LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, and probably Clemson, either Clemson or Penn State. I'd be shocked if it was Penn State. I really would. So, I mean, we'll wait and see on that. But I think that's what the top four is. I mean, the only I think question is where are they going to be seated, and you know, is LSU not worthy of number one right now? I don't see how they're not worthy of it. And you've got Ohio State and Alabama. Their schedule's been questioned, but it's not any worse than Clemson's. I'll tell you that. So, but hey, Clemson's undefeated. They're the national champs. That cachet comes with that. So just think, though, if Clemson stubs their toe, do you really think that there's two Big Ten teams and two packed SEC teams in? Because I got a feeling there's going to be two SEC teams in. And years past, I've, complained about it. But, I mean, how can you not? You're looking at probably Georgia or how do you penalize the loser of Alabama and LSU if they run the table, they got one loss and are not in the championship game? What if Alabama beats Georgia? Yeah, then you've got LSU, and or vice versa. Or the crazy thing is, which really could throw a monkey wrench into all of this, is Georgia's going to win their half. They're winning the East, and then they beat the winner of Alabama. If Alabama goes, wins that the West, and then they beat them, then you've got a one-loss LSU team, a one-loss Alabama team, and a one-loss Georgia team. Do you take three from the SEC? Because I'll tell you what, Ohio State's no shoo-in. And I know Jeff Beck, he's a big Ohio State guy, the godfather here at 12 Ounce Sports. But I'm telling you, do you really think, what happens if they stumble against Penn State or against Michigan? What happens if Penn State only has one loss? There's a lot at stake here. And so so it's going to play itself out. But what if it's just, there's so many ifs, but I do know that, well, I don't know, but I'm guessing that no matter what Oklahoma does, they're done. Even with one loss, they don't have a chance. Oregon or Utah, as much as I'd love to see it, I don't think they've got a chance. So really it comes down to two conferences. And the dark horse, I mean, I know this is way out there, and I'm probably crazy for thinking about it, but what if Minnesota's legit? What if they run the table in the Big Ten, go 13-0? How do you not put them in? I know it's very, very early and premature to talk about Minnesota, but, it's fun while it lasts, but they are undefeated. So that's one thing you got to keep in mind. Well, hey, let's go back to our guest line now, and our Major League Insider is back with us one more time from the Windy City. It's Paul Shivari. Paul, thanks again for joining us. How's everything going in your neck of the woods?
Everything's going great today. Hopefully my phone won't be passed into Bluetooth anywhere else today.
Oh, that was funny. Oh, my goodness. Well, hey, big fella, let's get right into it with, first of all, when we hung up, it was 2-2 in Game 6, and we thought, I know, at least I did. I thought it was Houston's to lose, and definitely it was. But I'll tell you what surprised me, as I was saying before you came on, Wednesday night Game 7, when I saw Greinke with a 2-0 lead and Garrett Cole warming up, I thought, game over. I went to bed. And when I woke up the next morning, because I had to get up, at dark 30, and saw that Washington won as easily as as by the margin they did, I was shocked.
Yeah, I think if Cole would have came into the game, it might have been a little bit more of leaning towards a Houston victory than a Houston loss. And I understand AJ Hinch's reasoning. I think he wanted to wait until a situation where it was maybe tied or they had the lead in in the game to bring in Cole. But with Game 7 on the line, I think you put your best guys out there.
Yeah.
And I know Cole pitched in, what was it, Game 5? He pitched out in Washington.
Yes.
So I mean, he was a little bit more rested than, let's say, Steven Strasburg was, who was rumored to be available with the Nationals. I think Dave Martinez said it absolutely wouldn't happen, but I think when push comes to shove, if the guy is there, he's going to play if they absolutely needed him. So, I mean, if this was a 16-inning affair, I wouldn't have been surprised to see Strasburg or Cole out there. But yeah, with Game 7, you'd think that you'd want to go to a guy like Cole, and I get why Hinch pulled Greinke out of the game. But at the moment, it seemed like Greinke was cruising and hadn't really racked up that high of a pitch count.
Was it like 80? Was it like 80 pitches or 85 pitches? Is that what I read?
I think that's right. I think that's right. I don't recall, but it wasn't close to 100. I mean, relatively close to 100, where he would have been coming out anyway. I think it was just once he gave up that opposite field home run to Howie Kendrick, I think that was kind of a warning sign.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, well, maybe it's time for him to go. But I mean, I don't want to say that's a fluke, but that's a rare freakish home run from Kendrick, and I think maybe Greinke could still deal. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but I would have rather gone with Greinke than some of those relievers at that moment, at least to maybe finish out the inning, and then have maybe then you go to your next best guy. Maybe you go to Ryan Presley or something like that. To start the 8th inning. So I don't know. I mean, we're not the ones sitting in the dugout making these decisions, Lou. So I mean, we can only do as much as we can. But I thought, regardless, though, it was a really good series, and I really think the better team won. I was going to mention the umpiring in the series. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered some other people.
No.
I mean, I think there's going to be those mistakes with umpires, and I don't think they ruined the outcome of the series. And the more I watched that the Trey Turner interference call, the more I got to side with the umpires on that. He didn't really make the effort to go to the outside of the line, and I don't understand why, in how many years of Major League Baseball, with this being the rule, why it has to be under the microscope in a World Series in order for it to be a problem all of a sudden.
Well, Paul, I'll tell you, here's my thinking on the umpiring, and I look at the 4 major sports right now. I think NFL has got themselves a problem with the interference calls and the roughing calls and all of that. They've got
absolutely.
It's I mean, that's a powder keg if you ask me, and it is so. They've made this rule where you can send a challenge out against pass interference, but what is it? 3% of the calls have been overturned, and so to me. And I think hockey is okay. And basketball, I've always thought the refereeing in basketball has been a joke in the NBA since, Moses wore short pants. And I'm not talking about Moses Malone either. But I think baseball, I do like their I do like their replay system. I think it's a lot more concise. And I don't have a big issue with the umpiring in baseball. I hope they don't go to the robotic system. I mean, I'm one that it's, even though calls have gone against me, like Andres Galarraga in the perfect game, but
oh man,
that's part of the game, Paul. In my opinion, it's, I'm old fashioned. It's part of the game. It happens to every team, and it didn't take away from me with this World Series because I thought it was one of the better ones that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree with you about the NFL with those roughing the passer calls. It's just I've seen instances this year where the quarterback is still holding the ball and they're calling roughing the passer, and it's like, well, what do you want the guy to do? Or the quarterback's just releasing the ball as the lineman was in mid stride to tackle him, and it's like, well, a 300-pound guy is not going to be able to magically shift his weight like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So wrapping up the World Series, if you would, just give me what your overall thoughts. You said that the better team won. I can't argue with that. They played great. They were a team on a mission. I once the confidence, I just was amazed at their confidence, how it wasn't shaken even when they were getting beat at home.
Yeah, I mean, to win 5 games when you were, in an elimination game and come from behind in all of those games, that's pretty impressive. And this is a team that I wrote off going into the season, mainly for my own emotional stupid reasons of I was sick of constantly picking them and watching them fail. But they've always been a tough team, and I think they finally had the resolve to do it, and they definitely had the pitching to do it. Yeah. And I think this team is a testament to how well of a manager Davey Martinez is. I mean, he was rumored for a few years when he was with the Cubs as their bench coach that he would be the next best manager to come up. And sure, he had a rough first year, as I think a lot of managers are, able to do. They're forgiven for that. But in year number 2, to take them up from a rough start in the first, 50, 60 games of the season to World Series champions, I think that says a lot about how well of a manager he is.
Oh, he's done a phenomenal job, and I'll tell you, he's going to be there for a while, I think, and winning a World Series in Washington D.C. He's the toast of the town right now. Well, speaking of managers, let's dive into this. Before we get into the prospective free agents, I want to get your take on this. We kind of touched on it a little bit last week with David Ross with the Cubs. I guess the big hire was with the Mets getting Carlos Beltran. He never managed, never coached. He's a player. He has the player's perspective. Were you surprised with that hire, or was it one of those where you thought, it was by process of elimination because they couldn't get anybody else? What's your take on that?
I guess I'm not surprised by it. I mean, I might have been actually kind of secretly rooting for it when I heard that. When I heard that Eduardo Perez was the guy that they were going for, which he would have been a great choice too. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, like, well, I understand why they hired Mickey Callaway, but I didn't agree with that hire as well. Because they had such great pitching that they wanted a pitching coach to be their manager, and that didn't work out for them. Uh-huh. And then when I saw that Beltran was on the list, I was like, well, it could work. I mean, these are at least guys that have played the game and relatively recently. And it's not like Beltran didn't want to manage. That was one of the storylines in 2017 when Beltran won the World Series with the Astros, was that, here's a guy, playing in his last games, and eventually we'll see him in a dugout, managing, and maybe not right away, but at some point soon. Mm-hmm. So when I saw him in the list of candidates, excuse me, when I saw him in the list of candidates, I thought, well, here's a prime opportunity for this guy. Now, I know that the Mets are a little bit in a win now mode, and I thought they were right to do that at the trade deadline. They kind of, I don't want to say they sat on their hands, but they should have been sellers according to most. And I want to say they were actually buyers since they ended up with Marcus Stroman. Mm-hmm. And to me, and I think after that, they went on an impressive run to put them right back in the race, but they just weren't able to finish. But I mean, I think they're a few pieces away from a really good team, and they play in the toughest division in baseball right now. I mean, look at the champions, the wild card champions came out of that division. So I like that. I don't know. I saw Joe Girardi was one of their candidates, and a lot of people in New York felt that the Mets really hurt themselves by not going after Girardi or not putting ink to paper with Girardi. And I don't know. I mean, would Girardi have? I mean, I guess Girardi, he's a Yankee. Would that have prevented him from being a Met manager? I don't know. But for some reason, I just didn't think Girardi was going to be the guy. I don't know why.
Do you really think that he wanted anything to do with the circus that's New York too? I mean, he went through it for 10 years with the Yankees, and I
and
bang
the Mets
on.
are a way unstable franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yankees. Yeah.
I bang on New York because I think that market's overrated for the sports that they have, but it is the biggest market. But my God, if you do great there, you got the world by the oysters. But man, you don't do good, you just get vilified. And I think, like you said, in 10 years was enough in New York. And I think Girardi, I know Philly's tough, but I don't mind the hire of Beltran. I think he'll be all right. Like you said, I think they're in a win now mentality. If they can just stay healthy, that pitching staff, I think they're going to be decent.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if, Zach Wheeler's a free agent, if he's going to come back, if they can still stay strong in the rotation. Bullpen was a big problem for them, at least in the first half of the year. They're going to have to address those issues. And, Pete Alonso, is he going to be able to repeat the performance he had in his rookie year? There's a lot of question marks with the Mets, but it's one of those teams where either they're going to completely fall apart or they're going to win the division. You just don't know right now with what they've got. But I think having a guy like Beltran is going to show some of those players, here's an example. Here's a guy that he's been a Met, and he was a beloved Met, and he came back. He wanted to lead this team. So maybe it'll inspire some great performances out of these guys.
Well, let's get to the hot stove part with the free agents, Paul. And my first question is, I know that Strasburg, he's a free agent. You've got Garrett Cole, the bigger names, Rendon. My first question with any of these free agents, are we going to see a team offer them double-digit years in their contracts? Like with what Harper got, and like with what some of these other big names have had. Do you think that's still going to happen, or is that a thing of the past?
I think that was just kind of unique to that situation. Harper was, I think, one of the youngest big name free agents. And he was like 27, I want to say, last year when he signed. So that was the biggest reason for that. Same with Manny Machado. I don't think Rendon is that young. I don't know. Okay, yeah, he's going to turn 30 this year. So I doubt we're going to see the double-digit years. And it would be a position player. I don't see a pitcher getting that type of money. But I do foresee Cole or Strasburg getting, one of the highest contracts in the league for a pitcher. I mean, like we're talking maybe Clayton Kershaw money.
Wow.
I mean, that's and why not? I mean, you saw what Strasburg could do this year. There's some question marks with, he's only hit, I think, 200 plus innings this year. I don't know if he's done it any other year.
Paul, I gotta tell you that Strasburg shocked me this year, because I thought coming into this year, I thought he was an underachiever. All the pomp and circumstance that he got. Now, part of it, like you said, 200 innings was, he couldn't get to that. And obviously he couldn't ask for a better time to shine than this year, So that's amazing.
Well, and he set up his contract for this very, very reason. He took a team-friendly deal so that he could opt out after 2019 and hit the market to prove his value. And boy, did he ever do it in the best way possible to be a World Series MVP going into it. So, good luck to him. I think he's a Scott Boras guy, isn't? Yeah. So there you go. I mean, it might be, like June by the time he gets paid, but he's going to be there, he's going to be demanding the highest contract available. And I don't know. I can't speculate where he's going to go right now. I mean, sometimes when you look at big name free agents like that, you think to yourself, like, well, is he a Yankee or not?
Yeah.
He screams Yankee to me, whereas a guy like Anthony Rendon doesn't scream Yankee to me. So the Yankees seem to think that they have the pitching necessary to go forward, but gosh, would that team look a lot better having Steven Strasburg in their starting rotation?
Wouldn't they though? Exactly. Geez, Pete, but are they? I know it's a totally different position, but like with Giancarlo Stanton laying an egg for them so far, and all that money that they laid out to him, when does a team, do you think, just start to get a little gun shy with doling out all that cash? I mean, Strasburg to me, I think is going to get in the neighborhood of 7 years and probably 230 to 240 million. That's my guess. And Garrett Cole, the same thing. And I mean, when does a team like the Yankees and the Dodgers just say, my gosh, even with all the resources we've got, we've been burned. When does it stop?
I think those two examples, though, the Dodgers and the Yankees, are the type of teams that have that unlimited payroll. I know they don't want to go too far over the luxury tax, but if they need to shed payroll, they'll find ways to shed payroll. And
fair enough.
Like you were saying, Giancarlo Stanton, I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to part with a guy like that, but I could see them making sacrifices along those lines if they really needed to in order to make that work. But like I said, I mean, it's hard for me to speculate. I really do think that Garrett Cole's going to the Angels. Or the Dodgers, but probably the Angels, just because he's from that area. I would imagine that there's going to be some sort of attachment to wanting to go back there. And I think the Angels are ready to sign a player like that. Granted, that's another team that's had some luxury tax issues in the past, but they seem kind of ready to put themselves in a championship window. So I could see them. I want to say, and this was like about 3 or 4 years ago, they were in that sort of threat of the luxury tax. Mm-hmm. I think they've done things since then to kind of prevent that. And part of that is, I don't know what they do about Albert Pujols. That's where primarily a lot of that money is going. That's not getting wins back for you. I don't know if they're going to release him, restructure that deal, buy him out, or just deal with it for, I think it's 1 more year that they got him.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's going to put butts in seats when you talk about a guy that's, I think he's inching closer to 700 home runs.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So I mean, that's a selling point right there with Pujols. But it'll be interesting to see how the Angels do this. Perhaps they might have like a backloaded deal for Cole, where once the Pujols contract is up, then he'll start seeing some of that year-to-year money increase. But yeah, we'll just see. I mean, and I could be way off on that, but for some reason, I think Cole's going to be the Angels. Strasburg, I'm leaning Yankees, but he could go anywhere. Phillies could grab him. I could see all sorts of teams wanting Strasburg. I could see the Marlins spending money on Strasburg. They got to start building something too. So.
Oh my Lord, yeah, you talk about a disaster. We'll talk disasters some other time. Them and my Tigers. You've got a couple of players I wanted to ask you about. One that's in your neck of the woods that used to be a Tiger, Nick Castellanos. I see you got a qualifying offer yesterday. What do you think with Madison Bumgarner?
That's an interesting thing. I wrote him off until I looked at his age and I realized he was 30. And he didn't have that bad of a year. It was kind of a quiet, good year for him, where I want to say like 3/4 of his starts were quality starts. And it's just, I think it's easy to get buried on a team like the Giants that just struggle from year to year, and especially just lately. So Bumgarner is going to be, if you can't get that Cole or Strasburg, or can't come up with that type of money, well, there's your next best guy. It's going to be him or Zach Wheeler in that next tier of top level, starting pitchers. I can't say where I think he's going to go. I mean, he kind of has Cub written all over him, especially since the Cubs didn't give Cole Hamels the qualifying offer.
Right.
So I could see them kind of making room for a guy like Madison Bumgarner, but I honestly, I don't know. I don't know where he's going to end up. The White Sox have been rumored, and I think they are possibly a starting pitcher away at least from a good rotation, but they're also waiting on Carlos Rodon is going to come back in the middle of the season. So I don't know if they want to spend that type of money or that type of commitment just yet. We'll see. But yeah, no, that's a good one. And as far as Castellanos, I don't know if you'd heard, but he got really emotional when he came to the Cubs. He was just so thrilled to be able to play at Wrigley Field every day. And I think he was a good player with the Tigers, but it seemed like just something clicked when he came to the Cubs, and he was just having these just great moments and just these. One of the leaders of the team right when he joined, to carry them through the rest of the season. I think if the Cubs didn't get Castellanos, I don't think they even, come close to winning that division that last year. So I don't know. I mean, I think I think that will be a partnership for at least the next year, unless they can work out a deal in the middle of the season. But I could see Castellanos staying with the Cubs and being happy there.
Well, I think with Castellanos, I can remember when he first came up back when the Tigers, this was a few years back, obviously, when he was, I think he was still in the minors, and the offer was on the table for him to go to Oakland for Gio Gonzalez, and Detroit turned it down because he was Detroit's number one prospect, and he did good for a while, but promises were made to him, and I think bridges were burned on both sides, and it was just time to go. And you could tell he was their best player, but he was just frustrated, and so a change of scenery for him was great. I really think so. One last question for you, Paul, and I got to let you go. Is I look at some of these other ones like Dallas Keuchel, and you mentioned Zach Wheeler. What do you think of Anthony Rendon? Is he good? Do you think he'll be back in Washington?
I think so. That seems to be the popular opinion. The Nationals aren't strapped for cash, and especially if they don't have Strasburg on their payroll anymore, that's going to open things up. But let's not forget that a year ago in September, the Nationals offered Bryce Harper what was then the largest contract in Major League history, and Harper turned it down. So it's not like the Nationals don't have money available to keep a guy like Rendon. And Rendon strikes me as the type of guy that would be happy to come back. I mean, I don't think he would give them the hometown discount.
No.
But I think he would just be, he knows the surroundings. He doesn't have to make new friends. He doesn't have to, impress anybody new. He's going to be, he's going to eat for free for the rest of his life in Washington, D.C. So why not stay there and just reap the benefits and maybe stay with that franchise till whatever the next phase of that franchise would be.
Well, I'll tell you what, winning cures all evils, and that makes it a lot easier for sure. Paulie, thanks again for coming on tonight. It's been a great 3 weeks talking baseball. We'll definitely have you on. If there's something late breaking, we'll do something real quick. Thanks as always, and we'll make it a staple once baseball season starts back up in the spring. But enjoy your winter season. Keep rooting for the Blackhawks, and
I'll try.
try to figure out your Bears, because I'm having a hard enough time trying to figure out my Lions. Your offense stinks and my defense stinks. So this ought to be great Sunday.
Funny that you bring up the Bears. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be a rough one this Sunday. But you know me, I'm a Bears fan, but I'm actually a bigger fan of a different team.
And
that's
right. I
don't know if you saw that really good game this last weekend.
I forgot about that. I had to dig that up.
Giving the Lions a chance to run one play with a timeout.
Oh my Lord, wow. You had to have been pulling your hair out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I just pulled in my driveway watching it on my phone, and I couldn't believe it when, and it wasn't. It wasn't John Gruden that called the timeout. He won't say who it was, but he said, it worked out, so I'll take credit for it.
Well, of course. That was that was a fun game to watch. I was disappointed, obviously, that my Lions lost, and Oakland exposed a weakness of Detroit, if you haven't already known it, and that's, well, obviously you can run the ball on them, but they're like Michigan. If you want to throw those little slant passes, you could do that against Detroit all day long. And Oakland did that, and they made Derek Carr look like Joe Montana. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to think with my Lions, man.
Think of how hard the Raiders had to try to win that game. With that last touchdown to Hunter Renfrow.
Oh my Lord,
tippy toes.
Great.
So
catch.
I mean, it wasn't like the Raiders broke away with that game. I've seen this the last few weeks where they just they give away games, or they just can't finish games, and I thought it was going to be the same thing all over again until that moment. And then of course the Lions drive down the field, and there's a weakness that the Raiders have that I'm surprised not all teams have picked up, and that's, you can go deep ball on the Raiders all day, and that's where the Packers and the Chiefs beat the Raiders earlier this year, was on that deep ball. So, and I was surprised because Stafford has some good weapons over there with Jones and Galladay, and Stafford's got the arm. I thought for sure that he was going to have a bigger day than what he had.
And I don't have an issue with that last play call. It took a heck of a play by you guys to stop that pass. I mean, you're on the 1 yard line, play action. I had no issue with it. It just didn't execute it, but it was a fun game to watch. My Lions, they'll be in every game. It's just, I'm not quite immune to it, but I'm getting there. So,
Paul, it might be a victory this weekend at Soldier Field.
Boy,
so,
we need it. If we have any playoff hopes at all, we got to start now. But hey,
before I go, I wanted to say the Veterans Committee is having their chance at inducting Hall of Famers, and it's what the modern baseball era from like the 80s. Lou Whitaker belongs in the Hall of Fame. I'm surprised this hasn't happened yet. It's that's one of the biggest crimes to the Hall of Fame. That and Marvin Miller, the famed players representative. I mean, I think if I don't know who's on that committee, and I know they've been leaning more towards executives, and that's probably why Miller hasn't made it at this point. But I think if there's any players on that voting committee, it would be just a disgrace if any of those players voted against Marvin Miller making it in the game, because they wouldn't be making close to what they made minimum salary if it weren't for guys like Marvin Miller. So
totally,
I think Whitaker is overdue. I mean, he's
100%.
If you look at his career numbers, way better than Trammell, who got in.
Yeah. And
I want to say it's him and a guy by the name of Bill Dolan that played in the late 19th century that have a career WAR that high and is not in the Hall of Fame. So it's time.
And here's the thing, and I love the chat. If he and Trammell would have played in New York or Boston or Los Angeles, they'd have been in the Hall of Fame, in their normal time, because they would have been, 19 years they played together, and they won a World Series.
They were notorious for being a great double play combination.
Oh yeah, they're defensively one of the top double play combinations in the league. 19 years, and you go back and name me a major league double play combination that's played that long together, and I think some of it may have to do with he alienated a lot of people back then because he wouldn't come out for the national anthem, him and Chet Lemon. And I know that, to be blunt, that pissed off a lot of people. And I think that's got something to do with it. And, his numbers, he went from a guy hitting 0 home runs to hitting over 20, at the end of his career per year. So, but anyways.
Do you think, with that being the case, though, with when his career wrapped up, do you think that there's a whiff of performance-enhancing drug speculation with that?
There could be. There might be. It's so hard to say now. That's a great point, too. But he never talked. He was quiet. He never said a word during his playing. You never saw him interviewed. He wasn't affable with the media, and I don't know if that's because of his beliefs or what, but he was never a spokesman. He was never on TV, just his play, and maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know, but you're right. A 76 WAR or whatever. When I saw that, I'm like, wow, crazy.
Yeah, and then just the mere fact that people are talking about Don Mattingly and Steve Garvey.
Yeah.
But they can't. I mean, you'd love to see all of them get in. I mean,
right.
They all had their heyday, but to put up the numbers consistently like Whitaker did, and then the fact that Trammell got in, that should have been the check mark right there that said that Whitaker's in. But so it's like, as far as a player goes, Whitaker, of course. But then when I saw that Marvin Miller still can't get in, that's just one of the greatest disgraces to the game that he's not.
100%. 100%. He has done more for baseball and for the players, and the managers, everybody. They've all made a ton more money because of him. Like you said, they'd all be making minimum. They'd be the worst salaried league of all four if it weren't for him. And, I think the other leagues thank him too, because he was the standard bearer. 100% agree with you, Paul. He should be there. It's an injustice.
Guys like Garrett Cole aren't sitting there counting the, potential millions they're going to make more in their free agency year, or already calling themselves a free agent at the, in the locker room after losing the World Series, if it's not for guys like Marvin Miller. So
totally agree.
I don't know. When I saw that list of guys, I was when I saw Lou Whitaker, I knew that you'd get a kick out of that, because it's long overdue. But
agreed.
Two, it's like, this is one of those times where they really got to make this right, because I mean, I love seeing Harold Baines get in there, but that really irked a lot of people.
It
Now
did.
it seems like that they kicked the doors wide open for a lot of guys to get in.
Certainly.
So now we got to make sure that the ones that deserve to get in there.
Well, next time we talk, we'll have a Hall of Fame speech, and we'll talk about if the guys that were in the steroid era deserve it. But I got to let you go, Paul. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for coming on, and have a good holiday if I don't talk to you.
All right, sounds good, Lou. Go Lions this weekend.
All right, you got it. Thanks, Paulie. Paul Shivari, our Major League Baseball insider here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Great conversation. My God, this time has flown by tonight. We got to hurry up and get to our Captain Lou six-pack challenge here pretty quick. But before we do that, the top 4 teams are in the playoffs. I'll give you the top 6, which really, again, I'm not surprised by the 6 teams. I'm a little surprised at the order, but let's do it. Let's give you the order and see what you think. Number 6 is Georgia. Not surprised. I figured that's where they would be. Number 5 is Clemson. Not surprised with that as well. I thought maybe they'd be number 4. It was either going to be them or Penn State. Penn State is in at number 4. Alabama at 3. Not surprised with that. LSU at 2 and Ohio State at 1. A little surprised by that. I thought it'd be the other way around. But you know what? Things are going to change because we talked about it. Penn State and Ohio State have to play each other. LSU and Alabama have to play each other. Those are in the same divisions respectively. But it's just going to open up the discussion because the loser of those games will not play in their respective conference championship games. And if they go with one loss each, it's going to really, really open up a can of worms. And that's what they want. And that's what they got. So anyways, that's the top 6. So without any further ado, it's time for our weekly show that's called the Captain Lou Extravaganza. And of course, the Captain Lou six-pack challenge. Well, here we go with the Captain Lou six-pack challenge here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. And last week I had a banner week. Wasn't 6-0. I was as close as you could get to my first perfect week. I had Seattle at -6.5, and they beat Tampa by 6, or I'd have been a perfect 6-0. I had Oregon come through and then some against USC. I knew that was a lock. I had Georgia -6 over Florida, and then I had Illinois -21 over Rutgers. Easy peasy lemon squeezy there. I was living large going into Sunday, 3-0. Seattle -6.5, the clunker. Philadelphia -5.5 over Chicago. Felt pretty good about that. The game that I was worried about the most was Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. It was a pick'em game. I took Pittsburgh. Boom, 5-1. I'm over the Mendoza line, 31-29 for the year after a rough start. Nobody beat me last week, so this is your chance. If you think you can beat me, listen to these picks and then send in your picks on my Facebook page, the Captain Lou Extravaganza, or you can go to Twitter, follow me there at The Real Captain Lou. Give me your picks there, or send me an email like, again, 80% of you do. And that, of course, is captainlousports@gmail.com. So without any further ado, let's get to the picks. All right, let's go to the college side of the equation. And let's start out with 2 Big Ten games coming up. Big games. The first one, I've got Wisconsin home to Iowa. Wisconsin, if they want any hope of getting into the Big Ten championship game, they've got to win this weekend. Iowa, just on the road. If this was a home game, I'd take Iowa all day long. Wisconsin, we're going to see what they're made of. They got embarrassed their last 2 games. Ohio State and, of course, Illinois. Wisconsin is a 9.5-point favorite. I think they're going to roll Iowa. I think they're going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it by the score of 21-10. I'm taking Wisconsin laying the 9.5. Next game, it's in Minnesota. How could I not pick that one? Two undefeated teams, Penn State at Minnesota. Penn State barely won against Pittsburgh. They barely won at home against Michigan. They spotted Michigan a big lead. Then they barely won at Iowa. Minnesota may not win this game, but they're getting 7 points at home. I'm going with Minnesota +7 against Penn State. Give it. They may lose that game. It's going to go either way, but I like Minnesota's 8-0. They've got. We're going to see how good they are. Obviously, their schedule's weak, but this is what I'm going with Minnesota +7. Then finally, 1 versus 2. I wasn't going to touch this one because I didn't know if Tua was going to play, but I got a feeling Tua's going to play. Alabama is a 6.5-point favorite at home against LSU. I'm going with Tide. I'm going with the Tide. Until they're beaten at home, I'm going Roll Tide. I love the job Ed Orgeron's done. Joe Burrow, the quarterback for LSU, it's great. But I'm picking Alabama. But as we just said, that doesn't mean that LSU's out of the playoff picture, because they lose this game, it might be a blessing in disguise, because they won't go to the Big Ten championship game, or I'm sorry, the SEC championship game, and they could still get in. I like Alabama in this one, though, -6.5. I just think they're a little bit better. They're a touchdown better. That's going to be a dandy game. There's some big games this weekend in college football, and I love it. But I'm taking Alabama. It's going to be an interesting game, -6.5. On the pro side of the ledger, Green Bay at home against Carolina. Cam Newton's on the IR. He's done. Kyle Allen's the quarterback the rest of the year. I think they're 5-3, but they're going into Green Bay. Green Bay was embarrassing against Los Angeles, San Diego, London, whatever you want to call the Chargers now. Who knows where they're going to be? Mexico City, Peoria, for all I know. But Green Bay is going to come back after that loss. They want to stay 5-point favorite at home. I'm going with the Packers all day long on this one. I'm going to say the Packers 28, Carolina 17. Maybe that close. That's my lock right there. Is going to be Green Bay -5 against Carolina. Next up, a huge game. Seattle at San Francisco. Monday night game. San Francisco, a 6-point favorite at home against Seattle. I'll tell you, Seattle, their defense scares me, and not in a good way. Tampa Bay put up some numbers on them. They were moving the ball on them. And I like San Francisco's defense is playing lights out. They're only undefeated team left. So, yep, the target's going to be on their back. It's Monday night. All the pomp and circumstance of Monday Night Football. You know, Seattle with their MVP quarterback candidate. But I love San Francisco's defense. And this could be a lower scoring game than people think. That's why 6 points is a lot. I hemmed and hawed on this one, but I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm taking the 49ers. I think it's going to be like a 24-17 game, or maybe a 17-10 game, something like that. I'm going with the 49ers at home. If this was in Seattle, I think it'd be a different story. I'd go with the Seahawks right now. But this is a big game. San Francisco wins this one. They get a 3-game cushion in the loss column on everybody. And that's going to be dynamite. And finally, this is one where I picked this one. Another tough one. These NFL games, some of these are getting real difficult. But I've got the Los Angeles Rams at Pittsburgh. And again, I got to check the line on this one because I forgot about it. But Los Angeles is a 3.5-point favorite on the road. I haven't taken a road team all weekend or all week on my 6-pack challenge. I'm going with the Rams. They're starting to click. I don't know how Pittsburgh's doing it, but now with Connor out, Mason Rudolph is playing decent. Their defense, and they're at home. That's why I kind of hesitated. Los Angeles with a week off, they get a little bit healthier. I'm going with the Rams. Rams minus 3.5 at Pittsburgh. So there you go. One more time. Here's my picks here for the Captain Lou 6-Pack Challenge. I'm taking Wisconsin at home minus 9.5. I'm taking Minnesota at home getting 7. And I'm taking Alabama at home minus 6.5. On the pro side of the ledger, I've got Green Bay minus 5. I've got San Francisco minus 6, both home teams. Man, it's going to be a good game next Monday night, a dandy. And then I've got the Los Angeles Rams. I'm taking them at home, or on the road rather, against Pittsburgh. So there you go. There's my Captain Lou 6-Pack Challenge picks. You want to get in on the fun. If you beat these picks, these 6 games, if you beat me, you're in the running for that $100 Visa gift card that we're going to be giving away at the end of the year, the Tuesday before the national championship game of college football. Go on my Facebook page, like our Facebook page, the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Put your picks there. This will be posted on there tomorrow. Or follow me on Twitter at the Real Captain Lou. I'll follow you back. You can DM me your picks or just put them right on there to say, Captain Lou, here's my picks. Or send me an email, and that's captainlousports@gmail.com. It's that simple. No purchase required, as they say. Be a part of the fun. Nobody beat me last week. 5-1 I was. I had a couple people tie me, but ties don't win. Ties are good for a point in hockey, but ties don't win in the Captain Lou 6-Pack Challenge. You've got to beat me outright. So there you go. Hey, it's been a wonderful show. What a fun show tonight. We've had some great guests. I invite you to check it out on SoundCloud and iTunes when it's downloaded. Give us until Thursday. It should be on there, but a great show. It might even be there tomorrow afternoon. A great show. We had some great guests. Tyler Kangas, great insight on his trip over to Russia with the ACHA D2 select team, and Cincinnati, the Bearcats ACHA D2 team on a roll again. Chris Fredrickson, what a fun conversation with him. His Marion team is loaded. They're doing well, off to a fantastic start as well. 9-0-1-1. And then Paul Shivari talking World Series, talking Hot Stove League, getting my blood boiling about Lou Whitaker not being in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be there, no doubt about it. So, hey, what a great show tonight. The 2 hours flew by, and that's what we like here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Well, we're going to be on again next week from 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern Time, live on 12ouncesportsradio.com, simulcast on 12-Ounce Sports TV. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight on the show. This reminder to everybody, keep your heads up, keep those sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open, everybody. Thanks for joining us here tonight on the Captain Lou Extravaganza on 12-Ounce Sports Radio, and we'll see you next Tuesday night. So long.